Hello and welcome back to this episode of Five Alum Task Force. I'm your host, Steve Green, and my guest today is a returning guest, and this was a gentleman I just could not wait to have back on the show. As a matter of fact, when we took a break during his first appearance a few weeks ago, I asked him then, we hadn't even finished, and I asked him, would you like to come back for part two later on? And he said, sure, anytime. So I had to wait a little extra time because we had the baby, our grandson was born, so we had to give a little time. But I'm so happy to welcome back Battalion Chief Jacob Johnson to our show again today. And I'm just going to give you his brief bio, because I think it's important, especially if you didn't have an opportunity to listen to or watch the video of his first appearance. He joined the Katy Fire Department in Texas in June 9th of 2000, when he was just 15 years old. He was a junior member of the department, and he was basically a glorified water boy, is the way he wrote it, for all the firefighters who were on the scene of a fire. But he was able to train with them every week and ride the apparatus when there was an open seat. Throughout the years, he moved up the ranks and changed departments in 2007. He was one of the original full-time members ever hired by the Pearland Fire Department. See, I'm saying it correctly now. I got it.
Sure.
Where I currently sit today as a proud member of the B shift as a battalion chief. He has taught at numerous schools around Texas and has started traveling to teach his mentoring class over the last year. And now that things are beginning to open up again, and hopefully it's going to mean a lot more travel for him, he teaches he has taught for fire department tactics, bearers of the oath, which he and I have now begun to share, as our mutual friend Jason Lista, and numerous other departments across the state and nation. He is first a husband and a father to a beautiful family at home, his wife Lauren and his son Luke. He enjoys hunting and playing golf on his days off, and if you can't find him there, he'll be in his office at home enjoying a book, magazine, or podcast with a glass of Jameson in hand. The fire service is his passion, it is my passion, it is our passion, but mentoring and seeing others succeed is what drives his soul and defines his mission. And if you haven't done so, in the April edition of Firehouse Magazine, you need to read Chief Johnson's article in that magazine. If you haven't done so, or look for it online on your digital copy, or just go to the website, read his article about mentoring. Chief, it is a pleasure to welcome you back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Man, I really appreciate the invite and come back and crush it with you on episode 2 here about mentoring. And it's good to see your face. Congrats on the new grandbaby. And
Thank you
I hope
much.
all well's with y'all.
Thank you. Yeah, everything is good. He's a great little guy. Kind of strong. As I said in another podcast, somebody asked me, are you going to make him a firefighter? I said, I can't make him a firefighter. I don't know what he's going to choose in life, but as long as I'm around, he'll learn about who we are and what we do, and then he can make the decision on his own. So yeah,
Right.
I'll be mentoring him about the fire service and teaching him about what it is we do and why we do it. So as I said in the opening, I just was so enamored by your approach to the concept of mentoring. You and I are both devoted to education, both to learning and then sharing. Because if we don't,
Yes, sir.
if we don't share, and I put this in the podcast I just released yesterday with Chief Ruben and Chief Bruce Varner, is that we have great opportunities coming up, and we have, FDIC is coming up in August, and then Firehouse Expo is coming up in September. And yes, it's true that not everybody can afford to go to a national conference, but we have regional conferences, we have local conferences. And maybe if there's no local conference, why don't you in your department put together an idea and maybe ask another department, hey, we'd like to do a little conference. We can get some of these people who will come in. And, and Jacob will tell you this, is that the fact that a lot of these people will travel to you and they don't charge you for their presence. They only want to be paid per diems, travel and lodging and food. That's it. But they don't charge you to be a speaker or a teacher. And there are many ways that you can create your own conference and still get great learning done, great sharing done, and continue the concept of mentoring. because that should actually be in every keynote speaker's vocabulary at every conference. Mentor. Teach what you learn at this conference to others when you go back home.
That's right. Absolutely agree with you. You couldn't say it better. I couldn't say it better myself, Steve. I've been teaching since last August of 2020. So I've taught probably 15 times or so, and I've yet to collect a paycheck. I refuse to get paid to teach and pass on my passion. I do ask for travel expenses, right?
Sure.
I mean, like you're saying, a per diem, because it does get expensive on your own dime. But yeah, I mean, I've yet to collect a paycheck. I truly enjoy teaching. I truly enjoy passing on the mission, and I think that the longer that I'm able to pass this on, and the longer I'm able to afford to travel and spread the good word, then we'll continue to do it, and I won't collect a paycheck for it. There's no reason to. It's our job as firemen is to mentor
Right.
and teach others.
That's a great way of looking at it, because it really is our job, and it's just so important. We were in this interview with Chiefs Varna and Ruben. We're talking about the new Wing Spread 7 conference that's going to be in August, and I think that one of the things that we talked about in there, one of the takeaways, was that this is a very closed conference. It's very unique. It's only about 30 people going up to the Johnson Foundation Wing Spread Conference Center in Racine, Wisconsin. But these people and this booklet that is the summary of all the discussions, all the presentations there, is then available after the fact electronically and in book format, so that, and electronically, I don't even know if there's a charge electronically. There might be, but I'm not going to say yes or no either way for sure. But even though the masses can't go to the Wing Spread conference, we can sure learn from them as best as possible, because all the information is going to be put out there. And whether we read it in the booklet form or we read it electronically, we still get to learn. And one of the good things about it, and I really thought about this about my class that I teach, and I hope to be able to get back now that I'm feeling better and things are opening up a little bit more, to teach my class on the elephant in the firehouse, is that when we teach, we can't be doing it for ourselves.
Right.
We have to be there to be teachers for the people coming to our class.
Yep, exactly. Yep. So I couldn't agree more with that. We have to be there to spread our message and to be the teachers. But I also feel it's important that, we're also there as a student. And, as you teach, you should be learning.
Right.
Because, especially like for my class, right? Like I say, like, this is how it works for me, right? Like, it's not a class built off, this is what you should do because I say it. Like, it's a class built off of a failure. It's a class built off of, I know what not to do, and I'm trying to prevent you from doing it. And so when you can be there as the instructor, but also as a student, and you're able to open up and take opinions and advice from classmates, and I say that because I feel like we're all classmates, we're all together, then you're able to learn just as much as you're teaching. And it really becomes a fun environment to where everyone feels comfortable opening up, and everyone's not just sitting there saying, well, I have to do this because Jacob Johnson said I have to do it this way. My way may not work for you, but if somebody across the classroom gives a suggestion, you're like, hey, that will work for me, man, use it, and it may be something that I can add to my presentation, or it might be something that I can add to the way I mentor my fire department, or it just might be a good idea to pass on to one of my officers. And that's the type of classroom, and that's the reason you should teach, is to not only just be there as an instructor, but to be a student with them.
Right. And I think that a good teacher, whether we're mentoring or teaching in general, is you always have to be willing to, instead of yell at your students, you have to be willing to speak with your students, not speak to your students.
Exactly. Exactly. You got to be able to correlate with them You got to be able to really get on their level, and if not, bring them up to yours and see eye to eye with them and just say, look, like, full disclosure, full vulnerability. This is how I am. This is who I am. This is what built me. And I'm just here to hopefully be a part of building you, and you a part of building me.
One of the things I learned as I started speaking back in my real job in those days was that using fancy terms doesn't necessarily make you a good speaker or educator. It's
That's right.
communicating with the people listening to you is what makes you a good teacher, mentor, educator. Because if they don't understand you, you know, you could have 5 PhDs, but if they don't understand you, that lecture means nothing to them. They walk out of there empty.
Exactly. You have to learn how to be a chameleon. You know, like they tell you, be a chameleon in leadership. You need to learn how to be a chameleon as an instructor,
Right.
And as a student, right? So your message should never change, right? Because your message is your message. That's what you're about. But what should change, depending on the type of setting you're in or the type of students that you have in the classroom, is your delivery of that message. You have to be able to deliver it in a way that they're going to pick it up, right? So I'm going to speak my message, my passion on mentoring completely different to a room of chief officers versus a room of senior firefighters, right? Because they have different views, they have different wingspans, they have different impacts in their fire department, and you have to try to pick up on those things and really deliver that message to where they grasp onto it, or else your message just becomes words and for 8 hours or 4 hours or 3 hours or however long your class is. And you don't want just words. You want impactful meaning, and you want an impactful message. And if you can be a chameleon in your delivery to that message, you're going to go a lot further.
So one of the things that you stressed when we started today is that what makes you feel makes one of the things that makes your message successful is the fact that you started by saying, this is where I failed. You
Right.
don't start saying, well, I'm a battalion chief, yada, 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 yada. You're saying, I was an officer and I failed. And you admit that from the get-go. How many, I'm trying to think, and you've probably been at more conferences than I have since I've been out for so long, but I don't remember in the several fire conferences that I went to when I was a firefighter, anybody telling us in class that, well, they had messed up, so they're going to try to teach us how not to do it. They just said, this is a class, this is what you're going to do, and that was that.
Right.
What was your experience before you started teaching, from going to classes and conferences? Did anybody else take that same very, really ultimate humility to admit in front of strangers that you failed at something in the fire service that may have been aspiring to do when they came into that classroom?
Right. Yeah, I think over the years with the conferences I've been to, I have seen it a few times. I think some of the best classes that I ever took were classes that were based off of success or failure, and you had a personal attachment to your message, right? You had a personal attachment to the reason that you're there. Like for me, it is a failure. And to me, the only reason that Jacob Johnson changed as an officer in the fire service was because of that failure. And if I don't honor that, and if I don't continuously remember that and try not to be that person, then I'm failing myself and I become a fake, right? And nobody wants a fake. They want the real deal. They want the truth. And so when you do see that at conferences, it does hit you in a special way as a student, as a spectator, as a listener. Even on podcasts, when I listen and somebody's like, look, I did this and it was wrong, and this is what I learned from it, man, it just really resonates with you. And, looking back, I mean, the do your damn job, and every kid's owed the opportunity to have a love affair with the job, and everything that I stand for is because I constantly remember how I failed this one employee of mine. And it's what keeps me solid. It's what keeps me grounded. It's what keeps me driving to be better. Because I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to experience it again. I don't want any of my now company officers on my shift to go through something like that, nor do I want a firefighter to go through something like that. So I'm constantly telling that story to people to try to say, hey, here I am, full vulnerability, full transparency, full disclosure. I screwed up really bad. And I ruined a kid's career because I was arrogant and I was cocky and I thought I was somebody. And I was the complete opposite of the officer I wanted to be. And here's how I made that change. And here's how long it took me. And here's the process that was developed from it. And that's why I teach. And it's part of the reason why I refuse to collect a paycheck. You know, I mean, eventually one day I'm going to have to. I've been told several times, like, you're going to have to get paid one day for this. And maybe so. That's down the road for me. But it's part of the reason why I don't, because I was so embarrassed of myself because I loved the job so much that I allowed my attitude to shape the future of this kid, and it shaped it in a negative way and ended in a negative result.
Right.
And I just don't ever want to do that again. I don't want to be that person ever again. I don't want anybody to be like me. You know, I want to stop them. I want to pick up their signs and symptoms before they get to that point and say, hey, stop. Let me tell you what's about to happen, and let me help you prevent it.
Let's let our listeners and viewers know that the person you're talking about actually did go on to have a good career in a different line of work, but
Yep.
And you're still in touch with them, and you're still and your friends, and I think that's very important. So why don't you let him know what he did wind up going to do?
Yes, absolutely. So he ended up he was an Army Reserve at the time. He went back to active duty. He's promoted through the ranks to where he currently sits as an E6. He is on a 1-year deployment right now in Japan. I talk to him just about every week through Facebook Messenger or on text message. He actually texted me for my birthday. He was like, hey, LT, still calls me LT. He was like, happy birthday. And he has a little nickname for me, right? But he said, happy birthday. And we talked for a little bit, and he's doing real good and taking beautiful pictures. And, you know, I just told him, I said, hey, man, stay safe, and we'll welcome you back to the States when you get here. So he's been real successful. He's done a real good job. And, you know, the one thing that I love about that kid so much, and what really breaks me down every time I think about it is, you know, I tell him sorry a lot, you know, and everything that happened in 2013. And I tell him I'm sorry a lot. And he always tells me, like, you have nothing to be sorry for. Like, it is what it is. I'm successful. You're successful. You have nothing to be sorry for. I never looked at you any different. I never even knew that you were failing me. But, you know, thank you for telling me, and thank you for having confidence in me. And it means a whole lot to still have a special relationship with that young man.
Oh, sure. Very, very important. So let's look at from where we kind of ended in the first episode. We were trying to kind of push the concept that we need to spread the love a little bit more amongst the senior members of our departments to be willing to be mentors. And it doesn't mean that we're asking you to spend extra hours of every day at the firehouse with a new recruit or a new volunteer or something like that. We're just asking you to be willing to share. And so how do we bring that message a little bit more home to those senior members who are, you know, we know they're kind of in the last few years maybe of their career, a wonderful career or their volunteer career, but with what's going on in the fire service today, both career and volunteer, what we're facing with changes and with the pandemic and shortages, you know, cash shortfalls because of the pandemic and the tax base shrinking, how do we convince some of these people to say, look, yeah, you're in the sunset of your active career as a firefighter, but that doesn't mean you're any less of a firefighter and that you can't share your knowledge.
That's right. So, you know, I mean, Steve, I think it's just good, solid communication, right? Like, I haven't been in the fire department a long time, but from the years that I have been, I've been taught and I've learned, you know, the hard way, and I've learned some very successful lessons that good communication goes a long way. And these senior men and women, they know what they have to do. Sometimes you just have to have a conversation with them and just sit them down and say, look, like, I know you have less than 5 years left, and I want you to look around you, and I want you to look at the other shifts, and I want you to look at all the stations, and I want you to understand what you're seeing. And when they ask you, well, what am I seeing? Tell them you're seeing the future of the fire department. You're seeing the future that is looking up to you right now that you have to set, right? Because we all know that company officers and senior men and women are your golden ticket. That is the golden ticket to the fire department. And explain that to them. Explain that. Say, like, look, as a chief officer, I have a good quantity of impact because I can go and see the whole shift and I can pass my message down to the whole shift. But you as a senior man or a senior woman, or you as a company officer, you have the greatest quality of impact. You have that time where you can sit down with these kids one-on-one, explain to them the history of our fire department, explain to them your failures, explain to them your successes. How did you fail? How did you succeed? Teach them how to pass on their knowledge to the next guy, and invest yourself in these kids, because there's not one person on this job, Steve, that can look at me and say, no one invested themselves in me. And if there is, I'd like to meet them, because I'd like to challenge them. Because even me, starting out in the volunteer fire department, I had someone invest themselves in me and teach me. And so I know that that's a guarantee in the fire service. Someone taught you something, and now you need to do that job, and you need to pass it on to the next guy. And I think just having a lot of good conversations will reinvigorate these senior men and women to have those moments with these kids. I don't think that there's any other way that'll get it done faster, and I don't think there's any other way that'll have as much meaning as just sitting down and saying, look, brother to brother, sister to brother, I got to have you do this. I need you to step up and do your job as a senior person on this crew and really get these kids going in the right direction, because one day your family might come in and be a rookie and you want somebody to invest in them. So I need you to start doing that now.
That's a good point. And I think that one of the other values of having that conversation with our senior members is the fact that sometimes that forthcoming separation is a very difficult point for them. You know, I was only in 8 years when I got hurt, and being, you know, bounced out of active service was just painful. I mean, I think that hurt worse than my knee hurt. But I think that maybe one of the things that we could do is try to give them that purpose, so that even when we give them the bash and they have the retirement party, whether it's volunteer or career, we say, look, I would like to come back once a month and just sit in a circle with a bunch of chairs with a couple of our people and share some of your stuff. Because you give them you help them continue with a sense of worth. You're not just saying, have a nice life, thanks for everything you did, and close the door as they turn around on their backs. Rather, you're saying, would you like to come back next month and sit down for 45 minutes with a bunch of recruits and share some war stories and stuff that you've learned along the way? And then you give them, wow, you guys still want me to do this? I'm not here anymore. That's okay. Just because you retired doesn't mean everything dropped out of your head, what you learned over those 25, 30 years.
Right.
And you give them that.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, that's perfectly said. Give them a purpose, right? I completely agree with you. There's so many little things that I think we can do in the fire service to get people motivated and to get people to spread their knowledge. And I think we miss a lot of opportunities. You know, like you say, give them a purpose. Well, get a coffee cup made with their name on it and hang it on the wall of the station and say, hey, I want you to come back. I want you to drink coffee out of this cup, and I want you to sit with us. Give them a retirement questionnaire. It's something we just started in Pearland that, you know, was Chief Rick Lasky wrote about it in his book, Pride and Ownership. And a lot of the Metroplex up in Texas does it. Of when they retire, have them fill out a questionnaire that forces them to put all their knowledge on this piece of paper that we can then send back to the members of the fire department. You know, just 5 or 6 questions like, what do you love most about this fire department? What are some of the big events that you were a part of, and what did we do as a fire department? And just give them that time to just open up and tell a story about their career that you can then email out to the whole department,
That's a great idea.
Yeah, invite them back to your recruit classes, let them give keynote speeches, invite them to all of your picnics or celebrations or awards banquets or anything like that. You said it perfect. I mean, just give them that purpose, give them an opportunity to come and sit down. We had a guy in Pearland. He was one of the first EMS volunteers to ever work in Pearland. And he was also a captain for the Houston Fire Department. His name was John Guthrie, and he got in Houston March of 1950, and he retired April of 85. Well, I was born April of 85, right? Well, up until he passed a couple years ago, he would still come to the fire station and drink coffee with us and ride runs on the EMS with the EMS supervisor. He would go on runs, and he still wore his old hat and his polo. And he was, well into his 70s, and I think really he stopped riding late 70s, early 80s. But he would still then just come and sit at the table and drink a cup of coffee and then drive home, and he had a purpose, because we would all sit down with him, and he might have told the same story 10 times about burning this 2-story in 16's territory, but every little story he told us meant something, and it meant more to him to be able to come and sit down and have that moment with us. And how much do you think we learned from John Guthrie? Like, a lot.
Right.
I mean, how much mentoring do you think he gave us? I mean, a ton. And that's what we have to do. That's what we have to push those senior people to be, is be like John, or be like this guy, or be like this girl, and have them be able to attach themselves to that person and say, like, yeah, I got to be like them.
Right. And a very important point that you brought up, and it's a little bit aside from mentoring, but when we talk about firefighter behavioral health, when we do have to leave the department, we have to retire out, let's say, or even you're disabled out. And, sometimes you'll see that, there's a knock on the door around lunchtime, and the young firefighter goes out there, goes, "Hey, it's that old guy who used to be the driver is back again for lunch. It's Bill's coming back again." Well, to you, it might be Bill's going to tell you the same story. But for Bill to walk back in that firehouse and sit at that kitchen table with the guys and gals, and grab his cup and to sit there, that's more than just him being a mentor. This is you being behavioral health helpers, because you're making him or her feel welcome to come back in that firehouse, and that they haven't been put out to pasture. And yeah, they may tell you the same war stories month after month, but for them, it makes them feel good about who they were and who they are, because they're still being appreciated, as opposed to just saying, "Yeah, Bill, we heard that before. Thanks. Maybe next week we'll see if we have." It's just so important, because behavioral health is such a major issue in the fire service today.
That's right.
We owe it to ourselves as a department and what we stand for in our communities, to be able to help our brothers and sisters who have served those communities and reached the maximum age for being an active firefighter or medic, and yet they still feel welcome, and they still feel a connection to what they were, and they just weren't put out to pasture.
That's right. And you're exactly right. I mean, because we always speak like, don't just identify yourself as a firefighter. Like, you're a human being, and firefighter is what you do, and we understand that you love it and it's a part of who you are, but don't think that's all you are, because one day when you do leave this job, we don't want you to suffer because you think you hold no value anymore or no purpose as a human because you're no longer a fireman. And man, you're hitting the nail on the head today, Steve. I shouldn't even be talking. I'll just listen to you.
No.
Because that's exactly what we should be doing, is letting those guys come in and have those moments for their own mental health, and give them an opportunity to just feel like a fireman again. And like I said, I don't have long on the job, but I am not looking forward to retirement yet. Like I am nowhere near ready for it, and I don't know if I ever will be. And I do worry for myself and my family when it is time to retire, of like, how am I going to be able to handle that? Because if I couldn't be a fireman today, man, I'd be crushed. I mean, I don't know what I would do with myself. So I mean, you're nailing it. That's exactly what we need to do, is give them that opportunity.
It was tough for me back in '85 when it happened. It wasn't an easy transition. They let me be. They asked me to be one of the fire inspectors in the community, which was nice to keep me involved. But it is. I mean, I had dedicated 8 years of doing it, but the fact is, it changed, and my life changed, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't unblow that horn, as the saying goes. You can't do that. So you have to say, all right, I'm going to go from this point forward. I love your emphasis on teaching and sharing, and the fact that in even this relatively short amount of time, I mean, it's just not even 20 years yet that you've been in, and a little bit less because you were 15 when you first got in.
Right.
So, but you developed this passion from your experience when you were lieutenant, but you've grown since then. And when you said to make them feel like a firefighter, again, that also reminded me of the fact that when a great guy, captain in a fire department on the west coast of the state of Florida, we knew each other on social media, and he was going to be the educational director of the renewal of the Great Florida Fire School. And he asked me if I want to come, and I could take pictures and do some interviews, and I put it on the website. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. Thanks a lot. And I really did enjoy the fact that I was invited to go there. And I think it was the second day, he saw me in the lobby of the hotel, and he came and put his arm around me. He says, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He says, "Are you enjoying yourself?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Do you feel like a firefighter again?" I said, "Yeah." And he gave me a big hug. He says, "That's the damn reason why I brought you here today. Because I wanted to do that for you. I wanted to let you feel like a firefighter again." And that was the best thing he could have said to me at that moment in time, because I did feel like I had met. He introduced me right away to a bunch of his friends who had come down to be teachers at the conference, and we connected, and we're still friends today, and stay in touch through social media and emails and stuff. And that was another turning point. First it was the podcast when I started it, when he was one of the ones pushing me into it, and then going to that conference and then teaching the next 2 years at the conference when he asked me to do that. It really helped me feel like I was still contributing, even above and beyond the podcast. And that can make all the difference in the world to anybody involved in the fire service. From like when you were 15, they let you ride on some of the calls.
Yep.
I mean, you weren't a firefighter then. You weren't even of age then to be a firefighter, but they let you sneak on board and let you come, and they kept you safe, but you got that taste. You got that taste in your mouth of what it was like. And that's what we need today. So let me ask you this. Do you see a way of incorporating your philosophy of mentoring into ways of bringing new blood into the fire service?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think I think that if you took this method, and I'm trying to figure the best way to put this, if you reach out and you start like a junior fire academy, let's call it, right? Okay, like I was a part of a junior volunteer fire department, and you start taking these kids under your wing, I think you could absolutely bring those kids into the job. I think you could absolutely do that. I think if we started with in the fire academy itself, maybe attaching a mentor to them, maybe starting a man, now I'm flowing with it, right? So like start a mentoring program within the fire academy where you have a set of senior firefighters that don't have anything to do with the academy. They don't work there, they don't teach there, nothing. And each one is attached to a student to help them study, to tutor them, to help them through the tough times, because the academy's hard.
Oh, yeah.
You know, maybe if they need extra help on skills, you can get them on the weekends to come ride at your fire department and do skills stuff with you. I think what we also need to do in the fire academies, and I talked about this on the Make Do podcast with Sean Duffy and Nick Peppard, is, you know, with EMS school, with EMT school, you have to do so many ride outs on an ambulance to get your certification. For fire school, you don't have to do that. So why don't we incorporate that into fire school too, right? Why don't we have these kids come to a fire station and they have to ride on a pumper or ladder truck for X amount of times, right? Whether it's 4 tours or 5 tours, or maybe it's just, you know, 120 hours, whatever. Let them come and ride and get to see what being a firefighter is all about. You know, you do that and you have your junior volunteer fire departments again, or just junior members of your department, and you start those teachings now. And yes, I absolutely think we could get some fresh blood in there and increase the number of firefighters. I know that's what did it for me. I was 15. They gave me a set of gear. They trained me. They let me ride calls. I went to live burns with them. You're right. My parents had to sign all these waivers, but I got to do everything except work on a scene. And that's what started my love for the job. And that's what made me dive into it. And that's what made me say, like, okay, I'm going to be a fireman. Like, I need to get a degree and have a backup plan. Like, I had that set and I did that, but I'm going to be a fireman. Like, that is what I want to be. It's in me. It is burning alive, and I've got to feed the fire. And it was all because people took their time and they invested in me when I was that young kid. So yeah, I think if we do something like that, you know, for fire departments out there, start junior memberships, start a mentoring program for the fire academies, have ride-along programs that are mandated to graduate the fire academy. I think you start that and you take everything that I say or any of the other great mentors out there, because look, there's a lot better mentors out there than me, right? Like, I'm new to speaking my way of doing things, and my way is not for everybody.
Right.
So you start collaborating and you start bringing this around. Yeah, absolutely. I think we could really take those young kids and bring in a lot of fresh blood to the fire department that we need.
That's great. That's a good approach. You know, some departments do have cadet programs and stuff, but I think a lot of departments might be concerned that they can't afford a cadet program or they don't have the personnel to run it. But I think that maybe we have to be a little bit introspective and look at our department from the inside and say, wait a second, if we can go and put out fires, we can go do a tough rescue, and we can rescue people from floodwaters, has been happening in Texas, Louisiana, in the South, the last couple of weeks. You're going to tell me that we can't put together some sort of a mini cadet program or a mini academy program to start maybe bringing interest in from young people and giving them some exposure so that we could generate an interest? I think you've made a very good point with that. And yeah, I think that's the way we have to look for tomorrow. I'm not sure if it was maybe with Chief Vance the other day, but we talked about the fact that, and you and I talked about this in our first one when we talked about the generations, is that I think it was Chief Arner said the other day, a lot of the firefighters in our fathers and grandfathers' age the firefighting job was considered blue collar at that time. It was basically a good, strong blue collar job.
Right.
And in many cities, communities, it still is. But I think that we can look today that it's more than that. And so that there are kids from other backgrounds that could still be attracted to the fire service with the right, use for lack of a better word, the right bait. If you put a nice big earthworm on that hook, you're going to stand a better chance of getting that big old bass than in just putting a bare hook in the water. Right?
That's right.
So
that's right.
If we bait the hook a little bit and make something attractive for younger people to say, what's going on at that fire station? What are they doing there? And maybe we can get them in. And then through the mentoring program, have good people ready to help them when they do show interest.
Right. Yeah. And I think, Steve, I think it's, I think it's still very much a blue collar job. But I think that there's a lot of white collar aspects to it that exist today that didn't back then. So, as far as in the station and on the scenes, that's still very much blue collar work, hard work, lots of sweat, lots of training, lots of just skills that regular citizens don't have, right? Because they don't go to those trainings and they don't have that certification. And so, yeah, I think it's very much a blue collar job, but because we put little white collar twist on it, or because we try to, and look, I mean, everybody's guilty of it, right? We try to make it a non-blue collar job, and it's just not possible. I think a lot of fire departments out there care more about their image and how they look and how they present themselves rather than how they perform on the fire ground. And we need to remember that we've got to perform on the fire ground well before we worry about our image, right?
Good point.
Because that performance on the fire ground will build your image, period. So I think if we take that approach and we start reaching out to these kids young and saying, look, like, this is still a blue collar job, but these are the advances that we've been able to make over the years. And this is why we need you, because we're going to be doing these certain programs, or we're making these certain advances. One of the best things that we've done in the last 20 years, I think, as a fire service, outside of all the improvements on equipment, fire trucks and everything else, is just the pay of a fireman. The pay has skyrocketed over the years. Even in my few short years, I mean, I've gone from, as a rookie fireman making $26,000, where rookies make 60 today. So there's been big, yeah, you see your face. Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's no joke. And that's in Texas. And so, we've made big advances there. And so, a lot of kids are attracted to the job because they work 10 days a month. They make really good money straight out of college. They don't have to have a degree. And that's where mentoring becomes important, because it used to be, you want to be a fireman because you want to be one, and because you want to do this type of work. This is something you're proud of, and you're not going to become rich being a fireman. To where we've transitioned to, firefighting seems cool and I get a good paycheck. Well, that's where mentoring comes even more important of, hey, yeah, firefighting is cool. It's the best job in this world, but it's not just about the money, and here's why. And then mentor them, right? And make them understand that, yeah, it may come with a white collar paycheck sometimes, but it is still very much a blue collar job. And I think the bait you're talking about is yourself. It's us. We need to be that bait. We need to grab those kids and put them on the hook and tell them, like, hey, this is why this job is awesome. And this is what I'm going to do for you. This is what this job can do for you. And you may feel very empty right now, but I promise you, like, when you retire, your soul is going to be so overfilled with joy and pride and honor and respect for this job that you're going to have nothing else to do but pass it on to others. And I think we're the bait. I think we have to be the ones to go out there and grab them and actually put that hook on them and let them swim.
That's a great point. I love that. I love that use. I'm glad I came up with the term bait for that, and you took it and you turned it around, and I think that's the great way of looking at it. Let's take a break right here. When we come back, I want to talk about whatever else you have in your list. Plus, one of the other concepts that just popped into my head before was that how we can use the concept of mentoring with public relations in the fire service at the same time. So we're going to be right back with my guest, Battalion Chief Jacob Johnson, right after these words. Remember, if you're watching the video, you won't see anything different. Listening to the audio, yep, you'll hear our public service announcements, and we'll be right back. Please stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to this second segment of this episode of 5 Alarm Task Force. My guest, once again, is Battalion Chief Jacob Johnson of the Pearland, Texas Fire Department. And we've been talking about his passion and my passion that we share of mentoring and teaching and learning and sharing and learning and teaching again. And it's this cycle that the two of us and many, many others in the fire service believe in, is really the integral part of the integral makeup of who we are as firefighters. To be good firefighters, we have to always be willing to learn. Then we have to be willing to share what we learn with others in our firehouse, or we learn to teach that as well. We learn it to teach it the right way. We don't just try to copy it and go teach it and say, I'm an instructor now, but we do it the right way and we share the knowledge. And just as we were closing off that first segment, we started a little bit to touch on the concept of public relations and how mentoring in the fire service and public relations can be tied together. And one of the things I just wrote in an article that I submitted was that we in the fire service have to be the ambassadors every time we're in public. Now, if we're in the middle of a big call, no, we all can't just stop to say hello to the folks and everything. But when we're doing our errands, we're going down to the market, the grocery store during the day to buy the food we're going to make for lunch and dinner for that crew that night. We should be carrying pamphlets and plastic fire helmets and coloring books and business cards that we can give. Many of you probably have been in a store, whether it's a big box store or your local supermarket, and you're wearing a uniform, even if it's your work uniform, and you bump into a little kid with his parent or something, and he or she their eyes just explode in wonder. Are you really a fireman or fire lady? Yeah. Oh, wow. I love fire people. And the parents are going to watch that interaction. And I'm not saying that we should be, give 20 minutes to that kid, but what I'm saying is we should have materials in our pockets. We should have Edith brochures, coloring books, the helmets, whatever we can, just to plant that seed with that family, not just the child, but with the parent. And that way we are mentoring that child. That child may only be 5 or 6 years old or 7 years old, and that parent may be in their 30s or whatever, but you now have mentored them about who we are and what we do in a positive way. And at the same time, we don't want to leave our public relations duties to just 1 week a year in October. We need more. The public has to know who we are when we're not running down the street with bells and sirens. They have to know that we are the same people in their community as everybody else. We buy food, we get gas at the gas station, but we have to be willing to always share a bit of who we are and keep that mentoring seed alive.
Yep, absolutely. And that's exactly, I mean, like my fire department, we do a really good job at that. We keep all the plastic helmets on the truck. We keep coloring books on the truck. And, everyone on the truck knows, I mean, especially the rookie, like you see a kid, you bring them a helmet and a coloring book, let them see the fire truck, give them the whole kit and caboodle, right? When you run into them in the grocery store, you're right. The parents' eyes light up because they probably have a question for us. Sometimes it's, do you know where the ice cream is? And you're like, yeah, it's aisle 13, Bluebell's the second fridge on the right. And then the kids light up because they're like, oh, you're a firefighter. And it's a great opportunity for both. One, because you can talk to the child and really explain to them, hey, like, yeah, we're firefighters and here's what we do. And if you stop by the fire truck after you check out, we'll give you a helmet or a coloring book, or we'll have somebody run out and get one and bring it back to them. But it's also a good time for the parents. A lot of times those parents have questions like, you buy your own food? Yes, ma'am, we have to buy our own food. We're here for 48 hours at a time. You work for 2 days? Yes, I work for 2 days in a row, or I work for 1 day in a row, whatever your schedule is. And you're able to start those relationships, and you're able to, like you said, mentor them and give them the information they need. And that just ends up gaining support, right, from the citizens to your fire department.
Right.
The one thing that I've been kind of preaching a lot about lately is we say that we're there for them, like we are here for them, we protect them, right, the citizens. And we always seem to attach that to a call. We always seem to attach that to our performance on a scene. Like we have to perform and train for them. And 1000%, I agree to that. But we also have to be there for them in the grocery store and at the bank or at the gas station getting fuel, or you see somebody with a blown tire, pull over and change their tire for them, or block traffic just to make it safe if they don't want to accept your help to change their tire. Have that opportunity to truly be there for them in all aspects of being there for them, not just your performance on the scene. And I think PR is one of the most underrated and underperformed skill that we have in the fire service today. I think a lot of people forget about it. A lot of fire departments forget about it. And I think if we spend a lot more time on PR, then we wouldn't have to worry so much about our image, because our performance on scene and our performance in the PR events and outside the scene would build our image for us.
That's a great point. Very good point. So again, we're spinning around this center, this great center that you've set up of mentoring. So let's look at a couple of the steps that you want to talk about that way to get started.
Mm-hmm.
That's in your plan.
Right. So it's step number one for me is just make them proud. So it's the most laid back but involved step of the process. I take the rookie, I sit in, and this is when I was a company officer. Now as a chief officer, I'm kind of in the background. I find little places to have those moments with them. But when I was a company officer, this is how I built the process. And so I would just have a conversation with them, like tell them about my entire life, tell them how I got to where I was, how much experience that I have and how much I still have to gain. Tell them some of the hard times I've been through, some of the successes I've been through. And then I give them an opportunity to tell me all about themselves. Tell me everything about you, anything that you want me to know, and then I have them give me expectations. What do you expect out of me? What do you expect out of this crew? And more importantly, what do you expect out of this job? And I keep those and I put them in my locker so I can read them every day before shift when I'm putting on my uniform or whatnot. I can read them and I can, just reinstill everything that kid is expecting for this tour. But then the most important part is I bring them out to the front bumper. And I talked about this a little bit in the article, is I bring them to the front bumper of the pumper and I make them sit on it. And I tell them the history of the front bumper and how special it is and how sacred it is. All the bunker gear that it's held after a fire, all the good memories that the front bumper holds with conversations amongst the crew, the shoulders that have been leaned on while sitting on that bumper for good times and bad times. And how, like, at the end of the day, if you're just having a moment where you're in your feelings and it's just really good, or sometimes it's just really bad, the front bumper fixes everything. And you can go sit out there, even if it's by yourself, and every bad negative feeling you have will be fixed. Any good feelings you have will be improved or reassured. And that front bumper is what brings everybody together. And so I make them sit up proud. They have their fresh helmet from the factory with the big orange front piece on the front, and I make them take a picture. And I give them that moment. And after that picture, I tell them, I say, hey, look, so this is the last time you're going to sit on the bumper until the crew says you've earned that right to sit on it. Until then, here's a rolly chair. When we're all sitting out here, you sit in this rolly chair and earn that right to sit on that front bumper with your brothers and sisters. And, they think they're doing all this because I'm the boss and they're just trying to not make anybody upset. But I'm trying to do it for two reasons. One, I want them to have that moment of, wow, I'm a firefighter. I'm a fireman. Like, they need to have that moment. That's important, that everything they've been through in their life, every bit of fire school, every bit of EMT school, all the hard times is worth it right now because I'm sitting on a bumper in uniform, taking a picture with my helmet, and I'm a fireman. And then the second reason is God forbid something goes wrong and they were to die. I don't want the picture in the paper to be a high school graduation picture. I want the picture to be that, of them being proud to be a Pearland firefighter, sitting on the bumper in uniform, straight and tall, chest puffed out, holding their helmet. And that's the picture that hits the paper is, rookie firefighter, whatever, proud firefighter of the Pearland Fire Department. Like, that's the picture I want. And so that's why I do that. And it gives them that sense of being proud. And it just slaps them in the face that, hey, I'm here. I'm proud. Everybody around me's got me. It's going to be tough, but I know that I can get through this and get off probation and have one hell of a career.
That's great. And that's, I think that's unique. I've never heard anybody else discuss that they're willing to put their personal information on the line to bring in somebody new. And I think that's a refreshing approach. And I think it's because you are as humble as you are, that you are willing to share both your successes and the failure that you see with, you know, a new recruit. And and that's part of, again, as we talked in the first segment, part of the bait is that you're opening up to them and letting them know that you might be a battalion chief, but you're still basically a firefighter, just like they are.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
And that white shirt tends to blend away a little bit, and they just see you just as one firefighter to another. And I think that's a very unique approach. And I give you a lot of credit for it, because we both know that there are a lot of firefighters who would never open up about their failures at all, let alone their, you know, personal lives and stuff like that, just to get a new recruit interested. But, you know, times have changed tremendously, you know, since my day, even since you first came in, and they're going to constantly change continuously. And I think that's a great first step to try to mentor somebody, is let me just get to know you and you get to know me, because I don't want you to think that there's this big divide between you and me. The only difference is how many years I've got in and what I've seen, and how much time you've got and what you've seen, but we still do the same job. We're still going to be doing the same job. We're going to put the red stuff, the wet stuff on the red stuff. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is. And I've been saying it for a while, and I'm going to say it until hopefully it starts taking off. You know, the number one asset of being a leader that is almost non-existent is vulnerability. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be humble. You have to have humility. And that is what's going to solidify your role as a leader. And that's what's going to solidify your leadership aspects that you have, is if you're able to look back and freely admit, I have screwed up. And because of that, I have changed, and I've changed to this, you know? And yeah, I still have those moments where it's like, yeah, okay, Jacob, remember, don't do this, don't do that. Or, man, like what you just did, that was kind of not what you preach. So, you know, I still have those moments of vulnerability and humility where I can go back and say, like, yeah, I need to change my delivery on some things. But even as a chief now, I still sit down. It's just at a different time. And like there's a rookie at the house I'm at right now, and man, he went through his whole first day, and it was about 8:30 at night. I said, hey, you got a second? And he said, yes, sir. And I bought him a cigar, and we went sit on the back porch, just me and him. We smoked a cigar together. I learned all about him. I learned everything that I wanted to know, and he freely told me, and he learned all about me. And he told me at the end of it, he goes, I've never had an officer do this. I've never had, especially a chief, do this. Like, thank you. And that's when it hit me, like, okay, like this is still good. This is still the right thing to do. You know, I've been doing it for 6 years now, and this kid's affirming, like, I'm still doing right, and I need to continue. And it's those little moments that, you know, continue to motivate me and push me further and have me always looking at different little processes of how to tweak them. But I know at that moment, that conversation doesn't need to be tweaked. It still just needs to be had. And so I went to the next rookie at another house, and I had the same conversation with him, and I'm just going to continue to do it, because it has proven to me over the years and through all my own case studies that conversation is vital to kicking off their career in your fire department.
It's like somebody once told me, you can puff out your chest all you want, but just remember, when that little pin goes into that puffed out chest, there's a lot of deflation that happens.
Absolutely. A good buddy of mine, Blake Stinnett, he's actually the founder of Next Rung. I don't know if you've heard of Next Rung.
Heard the name, yeah.
Yeah, so Next Rung, great organization, talk about behavioral health and mental health. He said it best on a podcast in March. He said, you know, words are just words, and they're nothing without action. And so your words that you speak have to have action. And that really set with me, and it set well with me. And it really brought home to the fact that, he's right. I mean, everything we do, everything we talk about, you want to puff your chest out a little bit in the fire service. You got to have action behind all of that, and good action, wholesome action, pure-hearted action, not just action to say it's the, to back up your words. You have, it has to come from a pure mind and a pure heart, and pure love for the job. And so just always make sure as leaders, man, that the words you speak have action behind them that match those words.
Great point. Okay, so that's the opening. This concept of this conversation, getting to know the person you're going to mentor or lead or guide. So what's the next step? What do we do next in your book?
So from there, I start with, okay, how do you learn, right? Because I think that's what stops a lot of people from wanting to be leaders. I think it stops a lot of people from wanting to mentor because they're afraid to have to be that chameleon. They're afraid to have to change the way that they learn or the way that they speak or the way that they deliver their message. They just want to be black and white, deliver the message, and if you don't like it, hit the road. That doesn't work. You have to change your delivery for the situation that you're in. And so if you ask them how they learn and you find that out, then you're able to change your delivery so they actually pick up the message. And so a lot of these kids will come in and I'll say, hey, how do you learn? And a lot of them will tell me, like, I'm hands-on. I got to see it. I got to touch it. And I just got to repeat it. Okay, that's great. That's easy because that's how I learn. Like, books are not my thing. It's very difficult for me to have to sit down and read. Like, I have to truly focus on it. My ADD goes all over. I got to really set myself down to read a book. But if I can have someone show me a skill and put my hands on it, then I can do it lickety split. So if you tell me that, then that's how I teach you, right? No books, no PowerPoints, very few videos. We're going to go out there. We're going to get dirty. We're going to put our hands on. Some will come in and they'll say, hey, like, I'm a visual learner through videos or through books or through PowerPoints. And so that's a conversation you have with them. You say, okay, like, cool. So here's what we're going to do is firefighting is a hands-on job. And it's blue collar work. It's hands-on skills that you have to perform. But what we'll do is, before we go out and perform this skill, or before I check you off on this skill, we're going to show you some videos, or we'll go through some PowerPoints, or if we can't find any, me and the driver or the two firefighters, somebody will record themselves doing this drill, this skill. You'll watch it, and then we'll go out and do it. And I've seen a lot of success, man, from just asking the question of, how do you learn? Because then that opens up everything to your disposal, and you're able to really handpick your delivery of your message, and you're able to handpick the way that you teach. That's going to put it right in their grasp. I'm sorry.
That's so unique. As a teacher for so many years, I've never heard anybody who really would take that approach. So many teachers just think, I'm a teacher, I know how to teach this, and just leave me alone, I'm going to teach it. And they don't, if the kid doesn't pick up on it, then they're, whatever the case is, they have to be tutored or something else. They don't have that interest. And I think that approach makes so much sense, especially in this job. Mm-hmm. And again, we say job, folks, again, this makes no delineation between career, volunteer, wildland, whatever. I mean, this is just doing the job that we do as firefighters and rescue folks. What a great way, because instead of just trying to paint with a white paint and cover every inch of the wall with just white paint and one brush stroke, you're now saying, I'll use a palette and I'll use different brushes of different sizes, dimensions, so that I can tune the learning process to this person's needs.
Right.
So that they will understand it. Because you and I both know, probably when we both went through hydraulics, and I went through hydraulics many years ago. I mean, when we still had to carry either a slide rule or a pad of paper and a pencil to calculate friction loss.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have anything on the pump panels that told us friction loss.
How many charcoal briskets did it take to go up a couple PSI?
That's a great line. But I think it's it's really so old school that it's new school today.
Right.
Because we do care about how they learn. We don't want to paint with this giant brush. And we understand today that people, adults, not just kids, learn at through different means, different methods, different visualizations, etc. And for you to offer that as a part of this basics for mentoring, I think is just a brilliant move on your part, because I've never heard that expressed in years by any other instructor.
Right.
That's willing to do it.
Right. And it's not anything that's groundbreaking. It's not anything that's new. I just think that it was something that was forgot about along the way. And because of my failure, I was able to pick it up and run with it. And I can't remember, Steve, if we talked about this on episode 1, but my failure was basically based off this kid coming to me. This is just one example. He came to me and said, "Hey, I'm still not having luck with handling this hose. It's still kicking my butt. Is there anything else you can teach me?" And that's my failure. As I told him, I was like, "Well, I've taught you all that I know and how I teach it, man. So, I guess you just need to go gain weight." And because he was scrawny, and that was terrible. But he took that, right. And this is what hit home with me, is he took that so serious because I was a teacher, that he went and bought weight gainer powder and started taking weight gainer shakes, right? He did everything that I suggested because he wanted to be successful. And if I just would have asked the question of, "Hey, how do you learn?" then he would have been able to learn how to handle that hose, and I would have taught myself on how to be that chameleon. And so when you're developing this and it's based off of failure, and you say, "Okay, so what did I do wrong in this case?" That's when it hit me. Like, I don't have any idea how he learned. I don't have any idea how he picks it up. Because I'm here to tell you, if my fire department was a book-driven promotional process fire department, here's 4 books, here's 3 months, read these books, take a test, I would still be a firefighter. I have trouble reading. I have to read a page 4 or 5 times in order to comprehend what that page is actually saying. So when I look at a 300-page book, I actually envision 1,200 pages. And then that's what makes me say, like, man, I'll never get this done. I'll never get this done. And it's very difficult for me to have to sit down and read. And it's just not how I learn. And you cannot be one-dimensional in teaching, and you cannot be one-dimensional in learning, and you cannot be one-dimensional in the way that you deliver your message. It has to be 3-dimensional. It has to be ever-changing. The whole mentoring process has to be ever-changing and ever-improving. And that's just one thing that I was able to learn myself, and has been skyrocket success with rookies, of just how do you learn.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because when I taught my class the first year that I created it, was invited to teach it, I had a few students in there. I think I had about a half a dozen, and one of them was my friend. He sat in, the one who invited me, and he said, "We need to just fix it up a bit." And so the following year, and I had made this whole PowerPoint presentation, because that's what I had heard about the first year that I was there, that I wasn't teaching. That's what I saw, these PowerPoint. And then during that off season, I saw a discussion on Twitter about death by PowerPoint at fire conferences and stuff. And I said, "Oh, Jiminy crickets, maybe that's what I was doing. Maybe I was doing too much PowerPoint, not enough talking."
Right.
And so what I did that second year is I only used a half a dozen slides. Everything else was my oral presentation, just walking around the classroom and looking at them and talking about, just had my notes with me, little note cards with me to keep me on the track, but more, what's the word I'm trying to think of? More, off the extemporaneous, not just looking at a slide. And that year I had like a dozen firefighters, and I got great reviews for that one, because just that change. Right. And I just, I was afraid to make the change, because everything I'd learned up to then said that, do a PowerPoint presentation. But making that change with that suggestion was the best thing I did.
Yep.
And that's why, I'll keep it if I have more opportunities to teach it again. And I think that's what you said, is you have to keep in mind that in the same way that you and I talked about when new people come in, that new generation, that every time we have a new generation coming in, they don't come in with the skills that the outgoing firefighters had when they came in. Well, yeah, that's the way it probably should be.
Yep.
There are not a lot of us who get to grow up in firefighting families or with a firefighting tradition. That doesn't mean we love the job any less. That was just the way life was for our families as we were growing up. And that doesn't make us any less devoted to it. So
Right.
if we have pay more attention to how our students or cadets or our attendees at a conference, at a lecture, learn, then we can be more successful teachers, instructors, and mentors.
100%.
We'll paint with a broad stroke. I'm sorry, not with a broad stroke, but we'll paint with smaller brushes and still fill in all the cracks, but in such a way that everybody sees the same picture.
Absolutely. And if you flip it around the way you're describing it, are you going to use a 4-inch brush to paint a half-inch hole?
Right.
No, you're not. And so you have to change the brush strokes. If you have to change that palette has to be multicolored. I mean, all the way to your neons, right? I mean, you have to be open to change. And that's the one important thing with teaching, and the one important thing with mentoring is that change is you have to be studying the data. You have to be interviewing people. You have to be talking to people. You have to talk to the rookies themselves. What was good, what was bad, and you have to be willing to change. One of the things I think that curses the fire department today is they're like, oh, you've changed since you were a firefighter. Well, yeah, because you have to. As you promote up, you have to change certain aspects of yourself. 1, because you have a new job, but 2, because you have a new leadership position, and 3, because your view changes. As a fireman, especially as a rookie, your view is about right here, 300 foot, right? And when you're at a battalion chief, man, my view is 30,000 feet. The fire chief's at 100,000 feet. And because I have to watch so much more, and I have to have that quantity of impact versus with that senior man or that senior woman or the company officer or that rookie, like you have a quality of impact and a very limited view, and you got to make everything you can at that moment, and you have to be willing to change when you step up and your view gets a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And if you're not changing and improving your processes and your teaching and your mentoring, then I don't think you're going to be very successful. I mean, I'm sure there's success cases out there, but I think if you want to fill your soul with everything the fire department has to offer, you have to be willing to change your approach and your delivery and your method to mentoring and teaching.
Yeah, good point. It's like the teenager who goes by a fire scene and sees one of us holding a hose and putting the water on the fire, but he has no idea the difference of nozzles. Do we have automatic nozzles? Are we using a straight tip? Are we using a fog nozzle? They just see us. So that's all they think it is you just open up the hose and put, just like in the garden, and you put the water on the fire and that puts it out.
Right.
But we have to teach them that we have all different types of nozzles to apply that water based on the type of fire it is, where it is. It's a big cellar fire. We have a special nozzle that we can put through a hole in the floor, and that's called the cellar nozzle. That's why it's called the cellar nozzle.
Right.
Because we have a special nozzle that does it that way. And we have, straight tips for a certain application. We have automatics for other applications. And if you're not willing to, those all have to be defined for that new person. That kid can't come in and say, oh, I know how to put water on because I do it at home, at the barbecue. I can no, son, we don't do it the same way here. But that's okay. That's okay, because when they say that, that's our opening. That's the knock on the door that says, oh, I need to learn more. Will you teach me?
Yep. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head with it again, Steve. I mean, you're crushing it today. When you do look at those nozzles, right? Because all they see is I have a 50 PSI nozzle that produces 160 GPM, right? I have a smooth bore and a fog tip, and they both produce the same GPM, so I'm going to get the same results. No, you're not. And so you have to take that moment to teach them about the droplet size and the absorption rate of a smoothbore tip versus the veins that are in that fog tip that make those droplets smaller. And you have to be able to describe steam conversion and water mapping, and it just goes and goes and goes and goes. And that's what you're supposed to do, right? I mean, like you're saying, I didn't grow up in a fire family. So, I didn't have any of that until I was 15 years old. So I was that kid that just thought, you just put water on the fire. That's not it. If I wouldn't have had anybody explain that to me, then I wouldn't be a good fireman. Now, my son, that dude's lucky. Like, that kid knows about fog tips. He knows about smoothbore tips. He knows about all these great groups out there that are doing great things. Let me tell you something. Herbie Tyler, Rob Ramirez, Basil Abraham, all those guys, Greg Rogers with NRC down there in South Florida, they love Luke, and they have doused that kid in swag. When he sees the gorilla come across the mailbox, he jumps up and down. He loves it. And he loves the fire department because of good people like that. And because he has a dad in the fire service, and because everybody that he runs into that's a brother fireman, I tell him, hey, that's your uncle, that's your uncle, that's your uncle. Like, call him Uncle Matt, or call him Uncle Garrett, or call him Uncle Herbie, or whatever, right? Like, those guys are going to take care of you if you want to be a fireman. And even if you don't want to be a fireman, they're still going to have your back because your dad's a fireman. And I teach him these things. And my son is so proud of the fact that I'm a fireman, that he gets to grow up in this life, that it makes me want to be better. It makes me want to be even more of a mentor, more of a teacher, and more of a better human being, more of a better person, and a better father, because I see him writing in a journal that Herbie sent him, and I see him reading the notes that everybody has handwritten him. Shane Bentley with Bears, he gave Luke a handwritten note, and Herbie gave him a note, and a couple of other my buddies have given Luke notes, and he has them on his room, and he reads them, and he writes in his book, like, I'm so thankful my dad's in this career because I have all this nice stuff from these guys, and they're always going to take care of me. And to see a 9-year-old write that in the journal, it really makes me feel like I'm doing something right, but it even reassures me that the way that I'm introducing him to this job is the way I need to take that same approach with every kid that hits the fire station. Because if they were a kid like me that didn't have this, then I need to do that for them. And if they were a kid that grew up like Luke is growing up, then I know where to start. And then from there, you can grow them.
That you said something very important about having your backs, because you're part of the fire family. And when our daughter and son-in-law they got the special baby seats they wanted for when they were expecting the baby, and they called their fighter. They're just over the line between our city and the next city over. So they called the city where their apartment is, and they said they don't do installs. But they said, do you know anybody in Coral Springs? And she says, well, yeah, my parents live in Coral Springs, and my dad was a firefighter. She says, oh, well, Coral Springs does, install. So why don't you give them a call? And I did. I sent an email and explained that I was a former firefighter, and they were kind enough to come out. And the guy who came out, a really, really nice guy, Bob Bertone from Coral Springs Parkland Fire Service, came out. And not only, it wasn't just, he didn't even just go to the cars and install the seats and show the kids. He came into the living room, and we all sat and talked. And he talked about what it takes, the responsibility of bringing a baby in and transporting a baby, and what has to be done. He reminded us we're going to have to get a new fencing for the pool area, because even though we're screened in, we have to keep the baby around from the pool when he's old enough. He's only 3 weeks old yet. But it was great because he took so much time to explain things first, and then went and he did the installations for them and showed them how to do it, and then had them practice putting the baby in themselves and stuff like that. When you take the time to serve the public in a non-emergency way, that can be almost as important to the public as when we respond to their emergency as well, because they value us as a needed commodity in their community. They see that we're more than just the men and women who run with lights and sirens. We are actually out there to serve the people.
That's right.
And this guy, Bob, was a firefighter up in Buffalo for, I think, 25 or 30 years. He was up there when I was in Syracuse. And so we both know what some of those winters are like up in upstate New York.
Yeah, buddy.
but it means so much when we can depend on our greater family, our firefighter family. And I guess probably one of the greatest things that's come out of, for me, of social media and the podcast is meeting so many brothers and sisters across the country and in Canada. And we know we have listeners in Europe and Asia and in Africa as well. But just the ones who have been my guests or I've corresponded with on social media and stuff like that, to know that we are a family and that we give, there's give and take. And do you need something? I remember when 2017, when Hurricane Irma was on the way, I was outside. I had met a gentleman who's up in Jersey. He's a battalion chief up there now. I had met him at the first conference. And I was in the garage schlepping out the steel panels, the hurricane panels, getting ready for the hurricane. My phone rang. It was a New Jersey number. I didn't know who it was. And I go, hello? He goes, Steve? I go, yeah, it's me, John. Okay. John who? I didn't know. I didn't recognize the number or anything. And then he sent me his last name. I said, oh my goodness, are you okay? Is everything all right? He goes, that's what I'm calling you for. I understand the hurricane's coming your way. And I said, he goes, is everything okay? Do you need anything? I said, oh, John, that's really nice, but you're in Jersey. I go, if you need something, I'll find the people to help you. So what do you need? And I just stood there and I had a tear coming out of my eye. I said, this guy barely knows me. I haven't seen him in 9 months, but he's telling me, no, it wasn't 9 months. No, I had seen him. I had met him a year, just under a year before. And I couldn't believe that here he was coming up to reach out to me from Jersey, that if I needed help, and he would reach out to people down closer to me in Florida to help. That's what family is all about. That's what the fire family is all about.
And that's what the brotherhood's about. That's the fire family, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, everything. Like, I can promise you that if I meet you one time and you tell me that you're struggling or you tell me you need something, I'm going to make it happen. Like, I promise you I will make it happen. And not only will make it happen, I will see it through, and everything that I tell you that's going to happen is going to, because that's what the brotherhood is supposed to be. Right. That's what the brotherhood does is, hey, I'm doing this. I'm going to do this for you. They're going to get X amount of money or X amount of help, or we're going to go build that deck, or we're going to go build a fence for them or whatever. And I'm going to make sure it gets done, and I'm going to do it. And because I know that if it was me that needed that, I would have brothers and sisters reach out to me and offer me the same help. And again, like, how do we get to that point? How do we establish that throughout your fire department, throughout your crew? Mentoring, teaching, telling them, like, you cannot be a 24 or 48 hour fireman. You cannot be a 24 or 48 hour brother or sister. You are a brother or sister 24/7, 365. So it means if my phone rings and it's you, I'm picking it up. If I call you, you better pick it up. If I say I need help, help me. Whether it's you or you call somebody to help me, help me. I mean, I get frustrated talking about it because I think it's something that we don't teach enough of, and we really need to teach more of it. And we really need to make sure that we hold everybody accountable to that standard of the brotherhood, and that we hold each other accountable to, you said you were going to do this, do it and get it done and help. It is a part of my class that you have to be in their ear, in their phone, in their face, right? Like, you should be telling them every tour, hey, you did a good job, or here's some improvements that we need to make for next tour. Hey, on your days off, like, why don't you read a couple of these articles or watch a couple of these videos, because it's going to, like, set you up for success on our next tour, because we're going to be covering these subjects. You make a call, or you have a rough shift of 16, 17, 18 calls on a 24-hour day. Call them and say, hey, how you doing? Did you recover? Did you sleep good? I know you made a couple tough runs. Like, anything I can do for you, be in their life, right? You cannot call yourself a brother or a sister if you're only a brother or sister 10 times a month. That's not what the brotherhood's about. And so, you gave an example. I know a lot of firemen out there that have that same example of meeting somebody one time and getting, a world of help from them, because they're in the fire department and they're a brother or they're a sister, and we're supposed to be there for each other. And we're supposed to do exactly what we say we're going to do and be there for them. And, you know, I mean, I think that's something you and I, we could probably talk a whole another 2 hours on that subject. I mean, just
Yeah.
about upholding to our own personal oath of being a brother or a sister.
Yeah. The concept of family can't be hollow.
No,
It has to be genuine.
absolutely not.
It can't be in our homes, because in our homes, our immediate family, you can't be a part-time family member. And in the fire service, we can't be a part-time family member. We call ourselves a family, then we have to be a family.
That's right.
And we can't just come together. A tragedy, we have to be a family for even the simple things in life, and be willing to be there and support each other.
That's right.
So if we want to kind of like sum it up, and I know that you have a bunch more steps that you use in your class other than the 3 that we've talked about. How would you wrap it up enough so that our listeners and viewers understand, but I want you to leave them a little bit hungry, so that when they know that you're going to be teaching someplace, that they're going to want to come to your class.
Right. So, I mean, to wrap it up, after everything we've talked about now for this, we're going on 4 hours now from episode 1 and now 2. Wrap it up is easy. We're the problem. The senior people, the senior members of the fire department, we're the problem, because we don't want to get out there and we don't want to mentor. You have to understand it is your job to mentor. It is your job to teach. It is your job to pass on your knowledge. It is what you signed up for. Too many times we get told, well, I didn't sign up to train, or I'm not here to train, or I'm not here to teach, or I'm not here to do anything more than make calls. And that's wrong. I'm here to tell you, like, if that's your attitude, then you need to leave the job, because you're not doing anybody any favors, including yourself. It is your job to teach, because one day the person you teach might be the fireman that is protecting you and your family when you retire. It's your job to teach, because that person might have a side job that protects you and your family. It's your job to teach, because, you know, like currently we're all going through these deployments for these vaccinations for COVID. Who's taking care of the families of those who are deploying? It's supposed to be us. Who's checking in on the families? It's supposed to be us. So why aren't we? If you're not, start doing it. But really simple to sum it all up, it's what I've been saying all along, is every kid out there is owed the opportunity to have a love affair with this job. So do your damn job.
That's great, Chief. Let me ask you a question. If people want to reach you, well, before we even do that, do you have any classes coming up?
Yes.
On schedule? Let's let them know about those.
Yeah. So I got several, actually. I have this weekend on May 22nd, I'm going down to Seguin Fire Department. I'm going to be teaching over there with FD Tactics with a bunch of solid instructors. I'm really looking forward to that. They had a firefighter, Roger Dean, who lost his battle with COVID. Very young fireman, brand new father. It's just a really terrible, terrible situation. You know, God works in mysterious ways. He was married to one of my really good friend's sister.
Oh, wow.
So me and this friend grew up together. We showed animals together. We traveled the nation together for leadership competitions in high school, through FFA, through AG. And I kind of watched his sister grow up. And so it's really close to home. I get to go teach there for benefit conference. So that's going to be really fun. June 25th, I teach at the Honor the Fallen Conference in Moore, Oklahoma. It's for 2 firefighters that lost their lives searching for 2 victims trapped.
Right. Yeah, we made big donations to their families.
Oh, awesome. Yes. Yeah. So it's for those 2 guys. It's a big fire
Winoka.
Conference there, 3-day conference.
Winoka,
and
Oklahoma. Yeah,
in Winoka. So I'll be in Moore, Oklahoma, June 25th. I'll be teaching there along with another stand-up crowd of instructors. I'm really on the low end of the totem pole there amongst those guys. So I'll be teaching with them. Rob Ramirez will be there, Jeremy Sanders, Howard Reinwald, Kyle Ramagus, Dennis Riley. I mean, just phenomenal guys.
No, Chief Riley, he's a hoot and a half. He's been on the show. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I can't wait. So David Mellon reached out to us, and he wants us to do this competition with chicken wings and hot sauce. And the sauce gets hotter and he'll ask you questions about the fire service. And I signed up for it, but I told him, I said, I'll probably tap out pretty early. Signal 7-1, holding no units, because I'll be down in that milk, I'm sure. But I'm gonna sign up. It should be a good time. I'm gonna sign up for that and have a good time with them. So yeah, I have that in June. July currently I'm wide open. I don't have anything scheduled in July or August. In September, I'm going to Firehouse Expo. I'll be presenting at Firehouse Expo on September 18th, Saturday morning. So I'll be presenting there. And then hoping to get in a few other places, man. Maybe down in Florida one day I'll be able to get down there, or at Fort Lauderdale, or maybe I'll be able to get in North Florida Fire Expo or something one day. My goal is just to continue spreading my passion and spreading the truth and being who I say I am, and just making the job better. So whatever comes my way, I'll be thankful for it and thank God for it and move on.
That's great. That's wonderful. And folks, if you want to get in touch with the chief, you can reach him at Jacob Johnson 012@gmail.com. Again, that's Jacob Johnson 012@gmail.com. Chief, it's great to have you back again. It was a great conversation. This time it was a great conversation the first time. I don't know. I think maybe in the fall we might need another visit. We need
I'm down.
Some of your vitamin M.
Hey, let's do it. I like that, vitamin M. I like it.
Yeah, but if you do get down to Florida and you're somewhere between Jason and me, we can find a place in the middle to meet up. I'm sure all three of us. So that would be wonderful. Again, absolutely. My sincere thanks, not just for being the guest, but for being as devoted to being as young a gentleman as you are, and yet what you've attained so far as a battalion chief, and being so dedicated to the family, to the brotherhood and sisterhood, and to bringing in, keeping the people that we have, making them better, and bringing in new people to make the rest of us even better. I think you have that full plate there that you complement, and I think you're a great asset and value to today's fire service. I wish you all the luck with being able to teach this class all over the country, because I think we all can learn from what you're teaching.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Old and young.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
A lot of value. All right. So again, our thanks to Battalion Chief Jacob Johnson for another great episode here on 5-Alarm Task Force. If you're watching the video, that will be the end of it. If you're listening to the audio podcast, we're going to be back right after these words. To all of you, thank you for tuning in, whether it's on video or audio, and we do appreciate it. You stay safe and stay well. Take care.